Okay, let's talk closing costs. I'm Lisa Taylor, a real estate agent serving Kingston, Ontario and the surrounding areas, and this is LT Talks RE, a weekly video series talking about all things real estate related. One of the comments that I get most often as a real estate professional is there are so many additional expenses that no one tells you about when you're buying a home. When you go into that lawyer's office and you sit down to go over the paperwork, many people are surprised to find that they actually have to come up with thousands more dollars than just their down payment, which in itself may be between 5 to 50% of the cost of your purchase, but that's for another video. It isn't just first-time home buyers who don't know. Many people don't move very often, so even if they're not first-time home buyers, they've only been through the process once or twice in the past, or, like me, they've been through it a number of times, but they forget. When purchasing a property, it's important to always factor in the additional expenses associated with that purchase. This includes the closing costs for your home, so you're not left scrambling a few days before closing. These fees are commonly called closing costs. I'm saying closing costs a lot. And if you watch enough HGTV flips, you will have heard this term. Factoring in real estate fees and closing costs, our profit will be, and they happen on the selling and buying end, so there's no escaping. Most buyers are aware of the costs associated at the point of offer, such as the deposit, which depending on the area that you live in can be as low as $1,000, which is not unheard of in the Kingston area, although I'm starting to see larger deposits with our current market conditions, but they're more likely to be over $5,000 in most areas, and this gives the sellers confidence in the buyer's offer. Typically, this payment is made within 24 hours of an accepted offer. All right, so let's get to it. You already know about deposit, but let's talk about closing costs for buyers. The first thing you may need is a property appraisal. It may be required by your lender to make sure that the property you want to purchase is worth what you offered to pay. It is most often performed by the lender after the offer's been accepted, before the mortgage has been funded, and the buyer takes possession. Most lenders in Canada will cover the cost of this property appraisal, but if you're working with a smaller lender, you may be on the hook for this appraisal directly. And this generally costs around $400. 2, your down payment. I already talked about this, but of course you need to pay the balance of the amount you owe on the property minus the deposit. You will need to have a down payment of between 5% for first-time buyers and 50% if you're purchasing a building lot with nothing on it. This will be your largest cash outlay at close, and for most people, the remainder will be their mortgage. The third thing you need to think about is prior to closing, a buyer really should engage a real estate lawyer. The lawyer is going to walk you through the process and explain all the fees, all the documents, and make sure that you are protected. The lawyer will review your offer to purchase. They'll register the deed in the mortgage, they'll perform the title search, organize the closing documents, and calculate all your closing costs. Your lawyer's fees will be in the neighborhood of $1,000 in the Kingston area, but it can be much higher. Number 4, title insurance. This is normally organized again by a real estate lawyer, and it is optional. However, this insurance protects the buyer against an unknown defect in the title of the property, and it is strongly recommended because it protects you against a wide range of risks, including fraud and forgery. And the price of it, or the cost of it, is relatively inexpensive at about $250 to $400. So there's this not so little thing called land transfer tax, and this can be an unpleasant surprise if you're unaware of it. All houses purchased in Ontario are subject to paying a land transfer tax, and this tax is paid to the government upon closing when a deed is registered. Land transfer fees can vary, but you can calculate them based on your purchase price as follows. 0.5% on the first $55,000, 1% on the portion between $55,000 and $250,000, 1.5% on the balance of over $250,000, 2% on anything over $400,000. So let's sum that up. On a $500,000 home, land transfer taxes will be $6,475. But if you live in Toronto, there is an additional municipal land transfer tax for Toronto residents. It's 0.5% on the first 55, 1 on the portion between 55 and 4, and 2% on anything over 400,000. So if your land transfer taxes, if you are purchasing a $500,000 property in Toronto, if you're able to find one, will be double at $12,950. There is some relief in the form of a $2,000 exemption for first-time home buyers, as well as individuals who purchase newly constructed home. There are some really great land transfer tax calculators online. Just Google it, and they'll help you figure this out, whether you live in Toronto or elsewhere. This is a big chunk of money that you're going to need to come up with at closing time. Number 6, adjustments. These are the costs that balance the scale of all the prepaid bills that the seller may have, such as property taxes, utility bills, condo fees, propane gas or propane tank fill-ups. The lawyer is going to calculate what amount is required to reimburse the seller for these bills from the time of closing going forward. Basically, the buyer is reimbursing the seller for overpayment of bills. As an example, if a seller prepays $500 in property taxes for the coming quarter and also fills up the propane tanks for $800, then the adjustments would be $1,300 in favor of the seller. Are you seeing how these costs can add up yet? Number 7, mortgage insurance. This is a requirement only if the down payment is 20% or less than the property's purchase price. So if your down payment is 10% or 5%. If you are borrowing more than 80% of the purchase price, this is called a high ratio mortgage, and you'll need to purchase mortgage default insurance. The cost of this insurance is calculated using a sliding scale, which ranges from like 0.5% to 2.75% of the mortgage amount. So again, if we're looking at a $500,000 property, at 80% funding, your mortgage insurance could range from $2,000 to $11,000. The only good news here is that buyers are allowed or permitted to add this to their mortgage balance, so you don't actually have to come with this money cash in hand at closing time. Number 8, status certificate. This is when purchasing a condo only. It covers all the important condo fees, structures, and special assessments, and it'll cost between $100 and $300 to get, depending on the condo corporation. Number 9, HST on new home purchases and vacant lots. As of July 1st, 2010, new home purchases became subject to HST, but it can happen that a builder includes HST in their purchase price, so you need to have a really clear idea of who's paying that HST prior to the closing date. Sellers, you are not exempt from closing costs either. While you do have the benefit of being on the receiving end of a potentially big payout, don't count all of that cash as money in the bank. Sellers pay the real estate agent commission, and this can cost between 3% and 7% of the sale price of the home. Sellers also pay legal fees, and they will pay a similar amount to the buyers at around $1,000 for an uncomplicated transaction, at least in this area. Staging. Often sellers choose to work with a home staging professional who would advise on decluttering spaces, rearranging furniture to create larger sense of space, and adding temporary accents, pillows, pictures, so that you have an updated modern version of your home. And staging fees can start at around $250. Hopefully this will help lessen the bad surprises when it comes to closing your next property purchase. But until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and all of that. And if you have any questions or suggestions for another topic that you want to know about, go ahead and comment down below. See you later.